And I think that's it. I think that makes us live. Although my camera's... There we are. Let's actually fix that to see. First off, let's check to see if the microphone actually sounds proper or not. Because I recognize that it was pretty compressed earlier. And hopefully it's going to do better now than it has before. You can't hear me. So Mac Attack, is that perhaps a problem on your end? I mean, I guess I have to keep talking, right? Like, it's not enough for me to be like, oh, is that a problem? Like, I actually have to talk. The reality of microphones is also a problem. If you ever look at one of those audio meters where it's bouncing up and down and it goes from green to yellow to red, you're actually only supposed to be speaking in a normal tone of voice where it goes into the yellows. But unless you go into the reds, some people will complain that your volume's too low. So it happens. It is a thing. So, hey, welcome to RPG Clinic. The first thing that I'm going to point out is that we have officially made affiliate, and so that's it. We're a thing now, which I'm pleased to point out there, and that's thanks to you and your help, and we appreciate that. Now we have to claw our subscriber base back up again so that we can get the emotes back, or at least the emote slots that we have. You'll notice that there aren't emotes. We're a brand new channel. We can't actually submit emotes at this time. Or rather we can, but there's a long delay before they'll be approved because you have to have been a streamer for I believe it's something along the lines of like 90 or 180 days of unique streaming, 60 days of unique streaming before they'll start saying, okay, you can just instantly put it up because you haven't had any violations yet. And of course we don't have violations on other channels, but this one's brand new. So, you know, we take some time. Yeah, we have temporary emotes, but they're pending approval, and we'll hope to have more news on that soon. Yeah, the torture of the wait is absolutely real. Like, completely and utterly. Yeah, the pending process is usually 24 hours, but we only made affiliate just recently, so... and yeah, you can pull off emotes from other channels. They still exist. Give plus. Yeah, waiting torture. The topic is not correct. Let's change that, as that's not what we're discussing today. I mean, it's not that we can't discuss it. It's that it's not what's planned for discussion today. So let's open up the topic. What? Why is this not valid? The hell? Yeah, there it is. All right. There. Is that going to fit in the box? Just barely. Not really. We can fix it. We can fix it. Just have to move it on up. Oh, maybe we can't. It's all cut off. What are you doing, thing? Oh, well. Whatever. It'll just be a weird R for now. That's fine. This custom text extends. Yeah, it sure does. That's fine. So, here we are. This is the first RPG Clinic that has run since the end of our long-running Changeling the Streaming campaign. But today is not the day for me to discuss that campaign over much. That's going to be Sunday, because that's our Froyo session. That's where the four of us are going to sit down and be able to talk about the whole game alongside your questions and your comments. Haven't had a relationship or a good RPG campaign since before LARP's times. and never had out-of-campaign relationships. You have many opinions. I'd love to hear your opinions on that right now. I think that would be super cool because I like your opinions. Ha ha! Welcome back, rest of the R. Fix that shit. Take that, world. I mean, relationship dynamics, when you're feeling super good about your boat ride. You're going to popcorn for this topic unless you don't. Okay, so married a gamer 31 years ago. It seems to have worked out pretty well. I mean, it honestly, it can happen. Relationship dynamics are actually a reference to more than one thing when it comes to role-playing games. So you have relationship dynamics in terms of the people outside of the table. So in real life, are you friends? Are you lovers? Are you married? Are you crushing on somebody sitting at that table, casting furtive glances over the top of your GM screen at that cute player who's just sitting there twiddling their thumbs and wondering whether or not you're actually ever going to start playing the game? Or are you perhaps an ex, embittered and resentful of the fact that you no longer enjoy the relationship that you once did with a player that is sitting across from you? That's outside the table. And then there's relationship dynamics inside the party. The idea that the group of players together also have characters, and that these characters may or may not have relationships between and amongst themselves. Maybe your entire gaming group is a polycule of random folks who all decided to enter into a relationship together. I have to imagine that that's happened. I am not a part of a polycule. Maybe. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to discuss the secret relationship between me and Scott, but if only. If only. See, now, if we were partnered and we had tons of emotes, there would be a Jot emote. Like, I think we'd have to have a Jot emote. But if we're not partnered, we only get so many emotes to have, and I don't think people want to subscribe just so that they can shout Jot in other channels. Kill a dimple getting real. I mean, this dimple has killed. Already an education stream. So, we're actually going to start. Which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start with relationships outside or inside the game? Let's make this an audience participation question. Dropping in for a Jot. I mean, Scott. What would a Jot emote look like? I think it would just be like the PogChamp, kind of like, except it would be both of us, and then turn the head slightly, and then just slowly have them move in together, right? Yeah, that. There you go. That's yeah, but kissing. Scott's eyes flutter when you move in for a kiss. It is heart palpitating. So nobody actually answered my question whether you want to do inside or outside relationships, so I guess I'm just going to have to pick for you. We're going to start with outside relationships. There you go. We'll mix the best of Pook with the best of Biff the Boss and the best of Jon Verrall. All right. So outside relationships. There's many different kinds of relationships that you can have with somebody else, but in general, if you're gaming with other people, you fall into one of three categories: strangers, friends, or beyond friends, let's say. And strangers will also kind of include acquaintances in there, but I distracted you with Jot. I mean, I sure I did. And these scrubs do have a V that goes down beyond the microphone. So we have normally in tabletop role playing, you're playing with people you know. online role playing, you're not necessarily playing with people you know. There's times where you can just join a game and it might be a large online community, in which case you don't know anybody, or it could be the fact that you really wanted to play a certain game and you managed to find the game online and you're perfectly ready to play, but you don't know these people. Strangers are honestly, like, and I say this as somebody who sometimes has difficulty meeting people I don't know. Strangers can often help you expand your gaming horizons. I've often said that I'm very spoiled because I have the players that I want. But you know, like it is fun to play with new people and to find out new things about your own play at the same time. That being said, there is something to be said about making sure that you're playing with people who you know, because maybe you'll feel safer with them. Maybe you'll be more willing to come out of your shell with them. That kind of happens across a lot of different areas. Creative Chameleon's in the chat, so I am forced to ask whether I sound better on mic. So we're going to leave strangers aside, and we're going to move on to friends and beyond. When you have a table, we'll stick to tabletop role playing for now, but we'll touch on LARP play and online play as well. When you're at a table and you're at a table with friends, then it's sort of assumed that everybody is there for a singular goal, which is to have fun. And of course, if you're trying to take the precepts of RPG Clinic to heart and using your word hole to ensure that you're going to have the game experience that is going to be most fun for you and everyone else at the table, then your friendship is not threatened in any way, shape, or form. However, audio is honey. Well, hello there. Hello there. I need to lay off the memes. The concept of playing a game with friends is relatively simple. It's the experience that most of us have when we role play. But my current tabletop game group I've been playing with for 5 or 6 years, we're all random strangers from a Discord that said roll a character and join our Friday game now. So you see, that's how you become friends, right? Sometimes you sit down at a gaming table and that's your introduction to people. There are people who I've met through a role-playing game and who I remain friends with to this day. And there are people who are like acquaintances who I didn't really know but were aware of, and then after sitting down to role-play with them, they became good friends. So it happens. Joke is not ruined, Crosshair. None of your jokes could ever be ruined. So we are... So we can learn. But when you start adding more than just friendship to the mix is where games start getting into a little bit of danger. Hey, Zesty Artist. Just because we start thinking a little less rationally when we are infatuated. I'm not going to say love yet. Love is something that comes a bit later. But if you are definitely interested in somebody, or if you are in a new relationship with someone and you have that new relationship energy, you are not acting in the same fashion that you would were you in a long-term stable relationship or if you were single. The fact of the matter is that for a large portion of the population, if you are in a new relationship or if you are crushing on somebody, then you also have, conflicting interests at heart when you're interacting with that person in any way, shape, or form, whether it's at work, at play, or online. It happens. Should I not be... I thought that Zesty was XST Artist's preferred pronunciation of that. I know there's no canon pronunciation, but it's the pronunciation I heard from you first. I always read it as exist. I do as well, but I try to make it to pronounce things as I was told. XST. Sorry, I am just starting vacation. I am so happy right now. I've got like almost 2 weeks of not having to worry about anything else, and that is just fine for me. I will take it. It seems the bot doesn't want to talk about RPG Clinic the way that it should be. I'm going to have to check that, because it should be calling up RPG Clinic. It's designed to. Anyway. So, have any of you in chat ever been in a situation where you are role-playing with somebody who you are interested in? Or perhaps somebody who you have just recently decided to formalize a romantic entanglement? Perhaps you are a friend with benefits, and those benefits are of a bed-squeaking nature. You turned off the bot? Oh, I meant the bot for no, the bot for the chatbot has never been configured for RPGClinic. I was talking about the Discord bot.
Oh.
And the random O fills the space. Yeah, annual leave. It's all good. So, yes, this has happened. I imagine that it's perhaps possible that no one in the chat has had this experience, and if that is true, then in some ways I envy you, because it can be difficult. It's difficult enough to deal with somebody who you... I do love the disagreement it causes. Is that Seelie or unseelie? If you love disagreements, that's neither Seelie nor unseelie. Disagreements often involve potentially the somebody attempting to change, and change is good according to the unseelie. But it was in a game where our characters were together and then they weren't. And then we started dating, and our subsequent characters were like, "You gross, stay away." So I don't know what that says. It probably says that you have a healthy disassociation between yourself and your character. Because here's where I would say that there's some room for error here. Role-playing is a fantastic way for you to explore that which you have not yet explored, because it is in a somewhat safer environment. You can explore dashing across a volcano's edge because you don't actually have to do such a thing. You can explore skydiving without a parachute while trying to maintain your momentum by firing a rocket launcher at the ground, and that's not something that you have to do in real life. And at the same time, you can explore both romantically and sexually in role-playing. And it happens a lot. It especially happens for those, according to some research that I know a few anthropologists who actually started looking into this, it's especially common in those who are identified as queer or otherwise non-hetero, because it's a way to sort of gauge and feel your way through what is not the societal norm, in a way that you can also either claim plausible deniability, or in a way that you can, if things don't work out properly, you can sever the relationship and walk away from it. I'm currently in this process, and I'm the GM. I'm currently not finding it to be a problem. Excellent. I had a crush many years ago before marriage. It turned out that we were better off friends, so it didn't mess up the game or friendship. Excellent. The Crosshair says, haven't had one, but I can imagine one and know how I'd act, which would be like playing Magic the Gathering with a significant other or a friend. After the deck shuffle and handshake, I treat you that someone must be destroyed until GG. Well, not quite identical to a TTRPG, but point is there. There is overcompensation, absolutely, that is involved, where you're like, well, I can't possibly be seen to favor my partner, and so therefore I will be extra hard on them. Or in terms of, as the Crosshair said, like if you're playing and you are facing off against an opponent who happens to be someone who you're interested in, then perhaps you are able to compartmentalize and shift things away. But the first error that I would say is if you are exploring a relationship with somebody who you are also exploring another relationship with, that can lead to danger unless you are both on the same page about what's happening. People read into games, and they don't necessarily they shouldn't necessarily read into games, but people do all the time. And it is not the best time in a new relationship for somebody to start thinking about how because your character is interested in certain things that perhaps you are as well, or that because your character is acting in a certain way that they find distasteful, that's a reflection on your own character. And by character I mean your personal, standing in society and your personality, as opposed to your PC. Currently partnered with a player in a game I'm GMing, and the only frustration I found is when he has a frustrating time in the game as he's figuring out the system or his character and wants to vent to me about it. It's really hard to be a sounding board and not react as the GM / try to fix it. I have no idea what you're talking about. No, it's not actually that much of a problem for for partners who've been together for quite some time. But it is difficult sometimes to realize that if you are in a different role, if you're in a different role in a situation, if you're a GM and your partner is a player or vice versa, then you, by its very nature, you do not actually have a peer relationship in that game. Yes, GMs are players. Everybody's there to have fun. Your GM is not in charge of your life. You don't get to control other people, but you are the arbiter of a game. You do hold a different responsibility in that game, and you are, to a certain extent, a reserved player as opposed to the others. Hey, thanks, Kung Fu Fenris. Unfortunately, our subscriber emotes are also temporary, but we have them, so happy to see you there. Happy to start climbing back up on those sub points. I shall await. Is the disembodied Kate? I don't comment on my relationships live. Yes, it's Kate. That's not a that it is not a secret. The point, it would only work with somebody else who's on the same page. Otherwise, one steps in and out, and the other takes it personally. I played Munchkin with the next. It didn't end well. That's because Munchkin is a bad game. And no, I shouldn't hot take so early into this, but I might. Munchkin is a gateway game. It is the kind of game that has wonderful illustrations, and it's simple to understand, and it gets everybody sitting at a table, and it's a game that doesn't feel like your standard board games like Monopoly or Scrabble, and yet at the same time, Munchkin is a terrible game. It is a game that is based on king making, except that the whole point of the game is essentially to destroy whoever is at the top of the pyramid until somebody lucks out and draws the cards that they need so that they can push themselves up to level 10 and win. Games take forever. There's very little strategy involved. Even with king making, the point is that anybody can actually claw their way up in the game. So there's no reason for you to start favoring one player over another until somebody just ends up king making because they're just so goddamn bored that they want somebody to win. And thank you, Walter Aod, for the subscription. That's very appreciated. My partner says she won't play it with her husband because it makes him an awful co-player. Any game that has a mechanic that encourages rules lawyering makes me rabid. Yep, that too, Aragorn, absolutely. I know that when you come down to like certain card games, especially collectible card games, they'll have very complicated rule books for tournament situations, especially games like Magic the Gathering that have been around forever and have literally billions of different card interactions possible. But rules lawyering is a mechanic in Munchkin where you are specifically allowed to just start kvetching at each other, and it's such a pain in the butt. Holy damn, is it annoying. So yeah, don't play Munchkin. It's a bad game. But the art's nice, you know. That's actually a lot of Steve Jackson games. I find that like there's some very interesting ideas and some very interesting presentation aspects of it, but the games themselves have some design issues. You're allowed to like Munchkin. My hot takes are hot takes for me, right? I'm not judging people who enjoy the game. I have friends who enjoy Munchkin. Ben, our friend Ben the Canadian, really likes Munchkin. The poor guy, unfortunately, probably can't find a lot of people to play it with him because the rest of us don't like it. So always be having hot takes. You are absolutely correct. And yeah, the crosshair, you are somebody who thrives on chaos, and Munchkin has an abnormal amount of chaos. Munchkin is essentially like Chutes and Ladders, or Snakes and Ladders, depending on which way you want to describe it, in that it is a game that is mostly judged by chance. So a game that I can imagine Bun Bun leaning back from the table to cackle is when I imagine he'll like. I mean, for sure. Getting back to the topic at hand after hot take number one, maybe that's what we need. We need a hot take counter that sort of just like sits at the bottom of the screen and just counts up. Incidentally, because this is a new channel and because we're doing things differently all the time, now's the time to make suggestions about just about anything, because we'll take a hot take plus, because we'll take just about any suggestions and consider them at this point, because it's a time of renewal, a time of new birth, a time of creation. So we have that available. All right, getting down to brass tacks. If you are if you are two players in the same game and you are in a relationship, and it's a relationship that is still relatively untested, then the only thing that I can suggest to you is do not purposefully try to manufacture a relationship in-game. Or if you do, have that relationship be significantly different than the one that you enjoy currently, such as perhaps our characters are, partners in crime, or our characters are, drinking buddies, that kind of thing. That's something Ripigoodness else. Yeah. Fair. Hot take or Letterkenny references count. I haven't actually seen Letterkenny, despite the fact that it is a Canadian television show. At least I believe it's a Canadian television show. Anyway. Compartmentalizing your relationship is going to be easier if you don't try to make them as similar as possible. And also, there is nothing wrong with you exploring different aspects of a relationship with somebody else, such as the friendship part, as opposed to always having that romantic charge that exists around you. It gets duplicating out-of-game relationships in-game is super kitschy, even outside of being potentially harmful. I mean, for sure. At the same time, I don't necessarily think that it's a problem if you're not forcing it, or specifically if your relationship is also past that certain new energy point. If you've been together with somebody for a while and then you are role-playing and a situation comes up where your characters get together, I have less of an issue with that as long as you kind of don't force it. Then the issue comes up as to whether or not you two are in separate roles in the game, if somebody is a GM or if somebody is not. Or sorry, if somebody is a GM and the other player is not. That's when it can get difficult to another degree, because now you are in a position where one player is, in fact, being ruled by the other one. And by ruled, I mean like ruling, or the universe being created around that character. The GM is also going to have many different NPCs sitting at the table, so it makes sense that there can be some extra challenges involved in that. Aragorn pointed out that there can be some challenge when you want to interact with somebody as a thoughtful and supportive partner, while also being the person who is perhaps responsible for that person having a bad day, or that person has the ability to try to fix the problem. But as a lot of relationship experts will tell you, oftentimes when somebody is speaking about their problems, they're not looking for solutions. They're looking for understanding and sympathy. So if your partner comes up to you and starts saying, "Man, I just don't know how to handle the wizard's tower," you giving them the solution may not be the answer that they're actually looking for. They may be looking for a partner's reassurance that, everything's going to be okay. Thank you so much, Silver Walker and Wild. Silver Walker and Wild. I like that name. I like that a lot. That is absolutely something that can come up. And then it's also a sort of situation where maybe the player is coming at you because they absolutely want a GM's word on it as opposed to a partner's. I'm having trouble with the wizard's tower. Help me optimize my character build is something else entirely, right? Oh, yeah, that's definitely a lunar for sure, right? Your lunar name, for sure, Risky Chimera. Guessed it. So, how do you resolve this kind of situation where you have a partner who is either your GM or you are their GM? Your best bet, unfortunately, as with most things when it comes to relationships, is communication. You need to be very open about, hey, so are you looking for reassurance here, or are you talking to the GM? You have to make sure that you address concerns before they start to fester, and that is work that has to happen on both sides. If a player is feeling neglected at the table, then they need to bring it up as soon as they feel comfortable doing so. And the GM should be checking in with that player and have the sort of emotional awareness that they may not be feeling so great. But if you don't catch that early, if you let it kind of fester, then it's, even if it's originally just a problem between player and GM, it becomes a relationship problem. Because remember that being in a relationship is also you constantly deciding whether your partner is trustworthy, is respectful, is supportive, all of those things always have to be taken into account. And if you prove that you are none of those things or lacking in that area when you are role-playing together, especially if it's a hobby that a lot of you take part in, then that's going to be an issue. So you have to address these concerns, both role-playing and relationship concerns, as soon as possible for that to work out. That being said, there is another situation that I have seen, unfortunately, far too often, and this happens a lot, is dragging your new partner into a game to be like, hey, I play in this game of X. You should totally play in this game. Come and play. This is not an area in which I would say, oh, it is a bad thing for you to introduce your partner to gaming. Absolutely not. It's great to be able to share hobbies, and role-playing is a fantastic hobby to share. The problem is when you're dragging somebody into it, or not letting them experience the game on their own terms. Trying too hard to coach a player, or trying too hard to force them to interact with the game in the same way that you would, is a very good way of turning that player off to either the game itself or to the hobby as a whole. And it's very common with relationships because we get very excited about the things that we're passionate about, and we want to share them with our partners often. Don't be this person. It's kind of like meeting a strange dog. If you crouch in front of the strange dog and immediately start trying to pet it, if that dog isn't already kind of okay with you, it won't react well. And if you thrust your hand into the dog's face and you say, here, sniff me, understand and expect, like, the dog isn't necessarily going to enjoy that either. You're invading their personal space. Trust me, a dog can smell you from a distance. You don't need to put your hand directly in the dog's face for them to smell you. In much the same way, your partner doesn't need you to like shove your face into a rule book for them to kind of get an idea of what role-playing is and to figure out whether it's for them. Hello, Artemis. What a conversation to walk into. Artemis is a favored role player of mine, and somebody who is also familiar, I know, with the concept of playing with partners. So that's there. Everyone says we had an off-game meeting check in about some issues, mostly some of the political issues that we brushed against our game because of the system we use, to make sure that everyone was in a good space. Man, it was the best thing. I'm going to have regular formal check-ins in this game every several months for sure. Formal check-ins are great. Most of my issues at the table has been as a GM dealing with a couple at the table who work more as a unit than individuals, going as far as playing each other's character while they're away from the table. I mean, I personally hate having somebody control somebody else's character. But that's me. I'm a storyteller, right? I'm the kind of person who's interested in a character's reactions and motivations and dialogue and where's the emotional arc and what's the narrative arc, and less about the actual like mechanics and combat. And it drives me crazy when I see somebody control somebody else's character because they are not you're not the person who controls that character. You won't necessarily make the same decisions. And then it also hampers the role playing because there's this sort of odd like, okay, so this person's there and we need them to make an intimidation check, but yet you can't speak for that character as the actual player would. So that's already something that kind of me, but I understand that that's a lot of tables will handle this situation differently, and that's totally fine. It's less fine, however, if you sort of feel like the two people are always acting as a united block. There is an issue when you come to a role-playing table where you might have two players who sort of fuse together, and because they're bolstering each other, refuse to consider any other plan or any other course of action suggested by other players because they can be rock solid and sort of be like, okay, it's the two of us, we're handling it, especially if it ends up being a block that can gain control of the table. This is also one of the reasons why, by the way, I recommend, if you haven't tried already, to have an odd number of players minus the GM rather than even. It can be handy to create an unbalance in the relationship between characters. If there's an odd number, it means that you have naturally a cycle where characters can create disturbances. Disturbances sometimes here are a good thing in order to progress a plot. It's an old narrative trick, but you'll find that often when you have a number of characters instead of even, it helps progress the story faster. What a strange thing. But anyway, yeah, it's totally true. Don't pet strangers' dogs without permission. People ask for pets. Yes, totally. I had a friend who once used to like run into my house and chase after my dog so that he could pick her up and like ruffle her around. And I kind of had I had to be like, she doesn't like that, man. Like, just sit down and let her come to you and she will love you. But if you chase after her, she'll never want to hang out with you. Big pain. When I introduced Trey to TTRPGs, I said it would help him, but encouraged him to reach out to another player who had previously agreed to be their support for building/system questions. I'm not sure, Erwin, if you're talking about your partner or you're talking about Trey independently of your partner here, but that is actually a really good piece of advice, is that if you're bringing a partner into a game, have them be helped by someone else who isn't you, so that it isn't just like, oh, my partner is the one who's leading me along in this game, because another acquaintance might have less of a stake and so therefore might be, in fact, a better teacher. The Mac Attack says, I would totally get Happy's character killed. Artemis, maybe he deserves it. You ever wonder that? The Mac Attack says, as a DM/GM, I operate from the standpoint that my primary job is to make sure that every player at the table gets a chance to input and shine, which means that you are, in fact, a good DM/GM. Crosshair, yeah, that was mostly the issue. They pretty much king-queened the whole group. We had 4 people, but they called the shots. Luckily, the player's girlfriend didn't want to play anymore, probably for said reasons. Yeah. A voting block in a role-playing game can be a huge problem, because it means that by its nature, it is preventing everybody from contributing equally, and that can be an issue. Aragorn says, I deeply believe in the balloon method for some games. If a player can't make it in a more gamey system versus story-driven systems, the missing character is just a balloon floating behind the party till they come back, present but perpetually looking in the wrong direction from the action. It's not my favorite solution. My favorite solution is wait until everybody can play, but obviously this isn't always feasible. And in that case, I personally also would completely agree with Aragorn. I would separate the character from the group, either through story, be like, oh, this person is staying behind with the ship, or this person is taking some well-deserved time off and visiting family. But if they're in a situation where they can't easily separate from the group, then they just become ghosts. They cannot be affected, and they cannot affect others. Or they're affected as the group is affected. So if the whole group is captured, they are also captured. But they cannot be directly attacked, and they cannot directly influence any situation either. Guarding the door forever. So yeah, I mean, it is a thing that occurs. So my main points, I guess, is watch out to make sure that the partners are both actually excited to be there. Ensure that the partners do not feel like they are forced to play in a certain manner because they are partners, and ensure that both have an equal opportunity to have agency in the game itself. That's if you're dealing with partners who are not, you are not one of the partners involved. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Regarding I still, now I keep thinking the door at the edge of forever, but that's something else. So what happens when you are role-playing a situation where you are in a relationship with other people in game, but not necessarily out of game? Anybody who's watched RPGClinic knows that this is the sort of thing that happens to me. I've had a thing. Agency is such a huge thing for all players, and a lot of DMs/GMs disregard that. If your player does not have agency, they're not a player. They're audience. Even my audience has a certain very limited amount of agency in my games. But if they don't have agency, they're audience, and not everybody comes to roleplay to be in the audience. No good. I've almost wedded and bedded my entire group. I mean, I don't know what you mean by almost. This is kind of touched on in LARPs as well. To a certain degree, the The issue of being in a relationship with somebody in game when you are not out of game. I haven't fake married Kate yet. That is true. I have not fake married Kate yet. That's the way that it's been. But when characters are together in a game, that can actually cause some issue out of game as well if people aren't used to it. Remember that there's people who have been role-playing for, decades, and they're very comfortable with the division of in-character and out-of-character, and they can basically do whatever they need to do, no problem in game. And there are people who are new to it who just aren't the same level of comfortable. And there are some people who have even been playing for a long time and wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with seeing or watching the way that characters can interact. There's also a certain element, and I'm in fact I'm going to take a careful step into this, but there are people who are also uncomfortable with the idea of potentially being in a relationship that contravenes their own sexuality. Examples of this can include that if we'll take an example of a cishet person playing, that a cishet person would be uncomfortable either with their character engaging in a non-heterosexual relationship, or also engaging in a relationship regardless of the character's sexuality, but the player's gender or sexuality makes a difference, right? Isn't a decisive action on a ladder to the sky basically a marriage? Yeah, that's true. There will be no fake marrying, only real marrying. I swore a lot when it happened. I mean, what? Why swear? Why swear a lot? Sorry, I did spend all day at work in this chair, so I have to make sure that I keep stretching and stuff like that. So it is I've lost my train of thought now. Right. So, as an example, we'll take an example from Changeling. I have a player, Scott. Scott, to my knowledge, identifies as a heterosexual male. I am also a heterosexual male, but I was playing a female NPC in the game who is romantically linked with one of his PC. And we don't actually have an issue with this, but it's been quite clear that this hasn't been an issue in the past. But there are players out there who get uncomfortable with the idea of interacting with somebody in a role-playing context if it contravenes their own sexuality. So it could be that if I did not feel comfortable playing a relationship with a character of Scott's, because then I am like, now I am playing a relationship with somebody else at the table who I would not normally consider being in a relationship with in real life. There are people who will feel this way. It is counterproductive to make them feel uncomfortable as a result. Our feelings about our relationships are not easy, and to change these feelings can take time, and they take deliberate effort and practice. We know how much I love Scott. Well, I mean, Artemis, can you blame me? I mean, Scott's happy to play a relationship with a bow so long as #Jot. I mean, yes. Who wouldn't love Scott? I mean, Scott is the lovable one, right? Out of all of them, the lovable one. Chrysler says, I used to play mainly a het woman rogue. At first I tried to bring in a relationship with an NPC, but quickly figured out the GM wasn't comfortable with it, so my character stayed forever alone. Yeah, it kind of depends, and part of the reason why we roleplay is to challenge ourselves, but also sometimes we roleplay because we just know what we want to play, and we don't necessarily owe anybody our challenge. Now, obviously, if you're playing with somebody who's just like, ugh, that's gross, because that implies that the two of us are together, and that's totally, insert your slur here, obviously then that's just a weak mindset that you shouldn't put up with. But it's totally okay if you're just like, I'm just not comfortable being in a relationship with somebody else. You also don't know their past, right? There could be trauma involved. There could be past experiences. There could be a specific thing about their relationship with that specific player. It happens. I get in relationships with my characters for stupid reasons most of the time. I mean, define stupid reasons, everyone, because stupid reasons could also be hilarious reasons. It's okay. I stabbed a lot of his characters, so it felt better. Yeah, it's true that you can feel left out of it. It is. I used to storytelling exalted game where my wife and friend has a romantic relationship with Abyssal Owner, and it was tragic, romantic but amazing game. See, like, yeah, totally. And there are times where you can watch other people at the table, including a partner, engage in a relationship, and it's awesome to watch. And there's some times where you can't disassociate yourself, and you can feel jealousy or attachment to your partner sitting at the table if they're trying to engage in a relationship with somebody else. So it happens. It's one of the reasons why it can be interesting or different to play a character whose gender does not match your own, but it isn't always easy to expect other people to be able to make that switch in their head. If it's something that's important to you, and that's okay if it is, you've got to find a group with whom that is not an issue. But it is possible, if you decide to play somebody who identifies quite differently than you do, that they will find difficulty in disassociating with that. And that's something that you're going to have to consider, whether it's something that you're willing to put up with or not. I'm not trying to get into an argument about whether or not you should be accepting somebody who is trans. My feelings on that are pretty clear. I'm talking about specifically in terms of roleplay. There can be suspicions and there can be questions, and sometimes it's enough to just sit down and talk to people about it. But if they really can't handle what you are presenting for them, then it may be better for you to abandon the game and move elsewhere than for you to just push forward, thus causing strife at the table. I was told the gender of my character after deciding on my name, found out that I was a single dad after my wife had been killed, so I was out for blood. I loved it. See, like, that I totally think is cool, right? If your players are up for it, and they're comfortable with being told elements of their character, including their gender or sexuality, and they're willing to roll with it, that's fantastic. Totally down. Super cool. This is a very complicated situation, and I realize that I am also speaking as somebody who identifies as cisgendered and heterosexual, which means that I don't really have much of a say in how other people decide to move around on stuff like this. I'm just trying to speak as best I can based on my experience, and I recommend that you listen to other people who may have better experience or more relevant experience than I do. So, well, my trash bard got into a relationship with the cleric because she originally just liked the idea of corrupting the angel until the cleric eventually reciprocated, and then she was useless mush. Great. My rogue got into a relationship with the warlock because their names made a good combined hashtag, and he didn't get mad when she won arguments by stabbing him. Great. I like playing terrible relationship partners, I think. I think I do too. I like playing good relationship partners, and I like playing bad relationship partners. Of course, the difficulty when you're a DM or a GM is when you play good relationship partners for some PCs and bad relationship partners for others. I have run into this. So I was running a very long Changeling campaign before. This is far before Changeling the Streaming. This is before I even knew anybody who was in Changeling the Streaming or who are the other people in RPGClinic. And there were 3 PCs, one of whom was in a relationship that was part of the true love merit in Changeling, one of whom was in a relationship with somebody who, it was going okay, but like it wasn't anything terribly serious, and another one who was in a relationship that was straight up not useful because she was in a relationship with a mortal who was a little bit excessively banal. And the player of this character complained to me at one point saying, like, I don't like, is it that you like the other players more, or is it that you don't like me because I always seem to get a shit relationship? And I was like, first of all, no, not a reflection on you. It's just a different relationship theme to explore. But then I thought about it a little more, and I was like, I kind of get it. She's trying to stay in this relationship because she thinks it's the only relationship I'm going to give her in the game, and she's trying to make it work, not realizing that part of the story that I was trying to tell is sometimes you're with somebody who you just, like, you might love them, but you can't be with them. And this was based on something that I had asked her before, which was like, what kind of games do you want to play? And she's like, I like personal horror and difficult decisions. But she didn't kind of click into the idea that that's the decision that I was giving her. And she had a very valid complaint. I was jerking her around in relationships all the time, whereas another player character, I was basically giving everything that she could possibly want because she happened to have true love. Not great. So that was an issue that I ran into while doing that. So in a way, when you're plotting out relationships in the lake, you have to figure out what your player wants. You can see the same thing in Changeling the Streaming. I have... it's been pointed out that I've never married Kate's character in a game. I hope that is because the two of us have talked about what we're doing in game, and that this is sort of like, these are the ideas that we're going to come up with, and not I'm just punishing Kate arbitrarily for some reason, or reserving my relationships for other players at the table. Who wants to summarize the last 45 minutes for me? Use your word hole, and relationships are complicated. Everyone says, and I'm constantly playing werewolves who are getting into relationships with people they shouldn't be. One got engaged to a hunter, found out he was a hunter who focused on werewolves, exposed herself as a werewolf to him, and he rode off into the sunset, unable to cope with the fact that he'd killed numerous werewolves in his life, and they probably all had personalities and relationships like his fiancée. My other got into a relationship with a vampire, which was illegal. That's an abomination, Aragorn. That's an abomination. Your libido needs to be calmed in the name of Gaia. Yeah. I just feel like napping again. Napping is great. If you can handle it, napping is just some of the best. Some of the absolute best. He's cute, though. Fair. And you should be proud of it. Pukajutsu, first of all, it's good to see you. And second of all, that's another issue to explore in terms of relationship dynamics in a game. The game setting may very specifically forbid certain romances. And sometimes they do it in a sexy way, like it isn't considered kosher for members of these two houses to intermingle, but sometimes relationships do occur. And then sometimes they make it very blatant that it's something that is absolutely discouraged, such as in the World of Darkness, for a vampire to have a relationship with a werewolf. But some players don't necessarily want to play strictly to canon. Maybe you want to have that sort of Twilight-esque tension between werewolves and vampires, where they are traditional enemies, but they can potentially find it within themselves. But at the same time, you can also get into a situation where you'll have a vampire and a werewolf in a World of Darkness game, and if people found the two of them together, they'd probably both be killed, like just instantly. They'd be vaporized based on the cultures of those two. Vampires are of the worm, and so therefore werewolves should not be with them. Vampires are threatened by the lupines, and so therefore should not be with Guru. There's also, of course, the sticky question of, like, can vampires love? And that's always been an issue that I've had with Vampire the Masquerade, but whatever. I'm going to mage next. Yep. Back and being in a PC relationship with your actual relationship is a busman's holiday. RPGs are about fantasy to some extent. Sure, but like sometimes it's like at the same time I could say like, yeah, my PC is male and I am male. So where's the fantasy in that? So should I always play characters that are completely opposite to what I am? I completely agree with you that a big part of role-playing is to be able to engage in fantasy, but not everything has to be different all the time. And being able to say, like, you should not do this because of X means that you're closing yourself off to it. And that can be a dangerous thing to say. MIT paternity test. Old Shemisi are not terrifying from werewolf. Yeah, well. Yeah, the word. I mean, unless we wanted to populate the world with evil spirit babbies Fenris, if that suits our motives, I'm down. We are watching a relationship in progress right here and right now. There it is. Uh, a relationship based on domination and conquest. I mean, it happens, right? I'm not going to complain. I mean, if your real life relationship is good, it's probably still enjoyable when you're both pretending to be elves. Yes, role playing still has the ability to disrupt relationships, just as anything else does. And because role playing often takes a little more emotional investment and a little more emotional vulnerability, it has a unique relationship when it comes to relationships. Yeah, I've been writing too much today. Hey, Erwin, can I interest you in this scroll? It describes an ancient rite, something about skies or clouds or rain or something like that. Oh, no. Oh, no. Anyway. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I might have time next month. The chat. So, yeah. Look, it's totally cool to engage in relationship dynamics. And as much as I have lampooned it in LARPs, I do believe that role-playing with a partner can be amazing and refreshing and awesome. It's wonderful. As long as you make sure that you take care of each other while you're doing it and afterwards. Being able to check in, being able to interact on that level, being able to enjoy trust is essential. And if you find yourself on the outside of a relationship that you see in game, then at the same time, this is your opportunity to engage with them in a different fashion than you have before. And finally, if you are actively infatuated or crushing on somebody at your table, just watch the fuck out. Because, again, in a period of emotional vulnerability, that isn't the time for you to start hinting at what you actually want in terms of your interactions with that player. Also, in regard to my calendar, I'm juggling 3 partners at the moment, and I'm running 4 campaigns. My schedule's packed. Yeah, that's a lot. That seems like a lot, but at least you're keeping busy during this time of pandemic. But yeah, no, it's cool. Trust me, if you can handle it, it sounds great. Much like with anything in a relationship, if you like and enjoy same things, excellent. But if you don't, also excellent. It's fine if you don't like pineapple on pizza, and I'm totally not throwing your clothes out the window. Yes, because that's that. If there's anything that I want you to take away from it is totally fine to be partnered with somebody who does not share your specific hobby. It's completely okay. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it can be healthier for a relationship if you don't do everything together. So it helps. Sounds like you need to quit your job to make room for what's really important. True. Fun fact, Hawaiian pizza is a Canadian invention. I do not enjoy it, personally. But that's because I'm not a huge pineapple fan. I like fruits that don't try to eat me back. But I will eat it if I am presented with it. But it's just not my favorite. I'm not a purist who believes that there are certain toppings that do not belong on pizza. So, that's relationships in a nutshell. That's the challenge. Unless you play blue, because if I find out years later that you play blue, we've had a serious lack of communication. Crosshair, what colors do you think I used to play when I played Magic? I'm not saying I played blue, and I'm not saying I didn't, but I'm curious what you think I used to play. Pineapple on pizza isn't a hobby, it's a way of life. I'm afraid I don't know the guild names, Crosshair. I didn't play during Ravnica, so I don't kind of know what the names are for color combinations. Red, blue, white? Nope. Sounds delish. Pineapple, peach, and strawberry. Well, see, now I can't have it because I'm allergic to strawberries. So, 3-color Magic wasn't really a thing last time John played. So, in fact, I loved playing 5-color back when that was like a real problem. I was not, and I actually enjoy playing all the different factions. Like I liked green quite a bit, but I honestly played them all. I'd run mono blue occasionally. I'd run mono red, mono white, mono black. I'd mix it up. but my favorite was 5-color. And if I was to make a Magic card for myself, this used to be a thing among my Magic group, is that we'd try to figure out what colors they are, but we wouldn't pick ourselves, we'd pick other people's. I was voted as a 5-color card, which basically means that I'm unplayable, but whatever. I'm a sliver? I'm a sliver queen. Jon is a sliver is one of the strangest comments I've had about myself in quite some time. Ripping on blue is a must. Well, I mean, I also, I'm somebody who definitely, outside of tournaments, I do not enjoy playing decks that are negative player experiences. And I find that, like, a lot of mono blue decks back in the day were specifically designed to be not, I get to fulfill my fantasy, it's you don't get to fulfill your fantasy until I can beat you by attrition, which is just like, ugh. Oh, they still are? Oh, that's good to hear. Relationship dynamics equals the gathering part of Magic the Gathering. It's actually the. Magic the Gathering is a negative player experience. That's why I stopped playing. You can pretty much give your deck to them and play a game. Yeah. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Negative player experiences is a thing. It's a thing in board games, card games, but it's also a thing in role-playing games. The idea that you are playing to have fun for yourself is fine. The idea that you are competing and you wish to come out on top, fine. A little less fine in role-playing games, but still fine. But when your play is specifically making someone else's experience annoying, boring, or worse, not fine. Whenever you're playing a game, or at least whenever I'm playing a game, my goal is to have fun, but also make sure that everybody is having fun. And if I play a game and the other player is not having fun, then I feel awful. If I'm playing Netrunner against somebody and I absolutely destroy them because of bad luck, then you kind of have to laugh about it and hope that the other player laughs too. But if they are genuinely upset about how the game went, then I won't feel like I had as good a time. Like it will wreck my time. So that's part of the reason why I don't like playing mono blue. Spicing up things with points. Experience points, which are the name of the currency in this channel now. Reasoning on the red-white likes power ramping, but cautious enough to want to have plenty of heals. Power ramping for me would be playing green. Drop them Birds of Paradise, Llanowar Elves. I used to fucking love playing fucking Priest of Titania and just being degenerate with elves, but did we talk about the good parts of being in a relationship? So, yeah, we can talk about the good parts about being in a relationship. And this is the end of my TED Talk. No. I love playing with somebody I'm in a relationship with, assuming that A, they're also enjoying playing the game, but it means that we get to share a hobby. It means that it's something that we can talk about when we're not actively gaming. It amazes me to watch my partner play somebody who she isn't, and to see how she is elements of her own personality incorporating into a character who is distinctly not her. I love seeing her interact in ways that I would never be able to see in real life, because her experiences are ones that I'm interested in, and I get to share in them that way because I get to be at the table when they're happening. I also am just like, look, when I game with my partner, and if I'm having a lot of fun and she's having a lot of fun, then I feel great. If she really enjoys the game that I'm running, then I admit that there's a part of me that feels pride and joy at being able to do something for my partner that she enjoys. And I get just as much enjoyment or more out of that by seeing somebody just kick ass. Like, one of the things that's kind of different about my situation is that the games that I run are online. They have an audience, and the audience interacts with the game, and they see it. And when somebody starts calling out a badass play that my partner made, it feels so fucking good because I get to be like, yeah, I'm not the only person who thinks this way. I'm not like crazy or I'm not blinded by love. Like it turns out that, yeah, my partner is totally awesome and badass, and that, that's just a cool moment to feel. Another great thing about role playing with your partner is that it's somebody who you can kind of count on. If scheduling becomes an issue, if you're playing with some strangers, if you are nervous, or if you have feelings after a game, then you have like a built-in support network, like right there, right with you. And your partner also gets to enjoy that support network, and it's fantastic. Artemis says it really well. My husband's my favorite person, so I like playing RPGs with him. And you know what? Yep. Happy Kilmore is also my favorite person, and I like playing RPGs with him. Green is power ramping, red is blitz. Red is also in Magic the Gathering. If you start getting into like Timmy play, red is also the color of dragons and stuff. So like they have big creatures, but they tend to need ramping to get up there. Having morning coffee and talking about XP spending. Yeah. Like literally, that's a cool moment. That's an awesome feeling to be able to share in that. Well, someone who doesn't give a crap about telling you how you fucked up as a GM. Yeah, that's good too. I mean, I generally try to suss that information out myself, and I try to encourage my players to let me know if I've made a mistake. But I also try to listen to my players so that if I make a mistake, then instead of them saying you fucked up, they're just like, hey, in the future I would rather not this, and then I try to accommodate that. My husband is our GM. I'm on every session. Yeah, fair. Hey John, that clutch patches move in the second to last session, that was the most amazing thing. I can't even wait for the Froyo. I think that the second to last session of Changeling was one of my favorite combat related sessions that I've run, because I feel like everybody had awesome contributions, and at the same time I knew that Patches had some things in her pocket, but I forgot about something else that she had, and she pulled it out, and I was like, oh shit, because I knew that it would work, and I was just like, it's so cool. Like, I didn't even care that I was botching like every other fucking roll and that my dice were treating me badly and stuff like that. My players got to be so cool. And if my players get to be cool, that's just like the best feeling for me. I thought that I was going to be stomping on some NPCs. I thought we were going to be saying goodbye to some NPCs. I thought that it was very possible that we'd be saying goodbye to a PC or even two. And instead they pull off something amazing like that. Like, so goddamn cool. And the fact that one of them was my partner meant that like later that night after Scott and Liz left, I got to high five her about it. Like how much of a fucking dream is that? It's so amazing to be able to share that. And I recognize that not everybody has that opportunity, and I feel for you, and I would reassure you that if you are looking for love, love is out there, and it will find you if you keep an open heart. And yet at the same time, I am fucking lucky, and I am just like, like, you guys don't have my partner, suckers. Like, I got mine. And it just being able to play in a game and then afterwards just being happy about it with my partner is just great, right? As much as this episode starts about like, here are the potential pitfalls about being in a relationship with somebody who you're gaming with, if you can make it work, it's fantastic. And thank you, Maddie Elise Bryan, which I can't tell if it's one person or three, but I'm glad to see you nonetheless. Alderod, you signed a legal document that says if you kick your wife out of a game for your buddy that she hates, she gets half your stuff. Well, fair. So Walter also asks, about relationships but friendship. John, how can you handle two players which are enemies in real life, but they want to play in the same group? Good players, but toxic to each other, I have to say. One of the two players is my wife. Fair. But they are both good players. Okay. Is your wife currently present in chat? It's just one. Great, Maddie, Elise, Brian. Maddie, Elise, what should I call you? Blink twice if your partner is in the chat with you. Yes. Okay. If two players are enemies in real life, but they want to play in the same group, my first gut reaction is to say no. The reason being that for me, the term enemy is a pretty serious term. It doesn't imply these are two people who don't really get along that well. It implies these are two people who actively bring out the worst in each other. And that's asking a lot when people are sitting down at a tabletop role-playing game where there aren't that many people around to sort of provide a buffer. If this was a large-scale LARP and you could kind of reasonably assume that the two could stay apart from each other as best they could, then that's a little bit different. If this is a LARP that encourages player versus player combat, I would also be very worried at this point. Maddie works? Fantastic. Hi, Maddie. So my first reaction to say, like, if you know that two players don't get along well, and if you know that they won't be able to put that aside, that they will bring out toxicity in each other, my gut reaction is to say no. And even if you like both of those people, to say maybe you should try not being in the same game. That being said, let's say that we're stretching the definition of enemy a little bit to include people who just like, like, I don't like this person that much, and sometimes they kind of get my dander up. At that point, I would sit down with each of them separately and ask, like, are you okay with this other person being in the game? Honestly. And if both of them are like, yeah, sure, then I would say fine. But at that point, I would also just remind everybody sitting at a table that the point of the game is for everybody to have fun. And the instant that I get the impression that somebody is out to make sure that somebody else is not having fun, or that somebody is being selfish to the point where other people aren't allowed to also have fun, I shut that shit down. Because life's too short to play in games where you're like, you end the game and you walk away being like, oh, how am I going to keep these two players together? Like, it's not worth it. There are plenty of games out there. And as much as it can be cruel to sort of be like, hey, I don't want you to be in this game with this other person, and it means that one person can't play or both people can't play. I also am at the point where I just don't need that kind of drama in my life. Maddie, in a way, it kind of is. One of the geek fallacies that exist is that you should not outcast anyone, because geeks are often outcast when they're growing up. And so when you kind of get to that age where you're like in your late teens, 20s, you sort of feel like in a gaming group or in a friend group, you have to accept everyone because it's not fair to kick people out. Like, or you feel badly for somebody who gets kicked out, and you start making excuses for them. Excuses like, well, they're kind of abrasive, but they can be really nice when you get to know them. Or, yeah, they're kind of a dick, but that's just the way that they, make friends, and that's their sense of humor. I've had this experience. I've defended people who I shouldn't have. I have defended a friend who was straight up misogynist, being like, I don't like the way that he's talking about women, but at the same time, like, he's had a rough time of it, and I know that he's had a rough childhood, so I'm hoping that we can make it better. And the reality is that you don't owe people friendship. You never do. In the same way that you don't owe somebody a relationship, a romantic relationship, a sexual relationship, you don't owe somebody a friendship either. Friendship is earned. Trust is earned. And if you have somebody in your group who is consistently making it difficult for you to consider this person a friend, it is okay to tell them that you no longer wish the pleasure of their company. It is okay to organize events where they are not invited. Because oftentimes the things that make us reevaluate our personality or our reevaluate the way that we treat others is when we are put in a position where we must confront it. And by excusing it constantly, you aren't allowing somebody to confront themselves. You are forgiving them for being assholes. And that's not worth it in the end. and it's not worth your own emotional state. If it's two friends who just happen to not get along, you can still hang out with both of them, but you don't have to put up with them being in the same room together. You can say, like, I'm sorry, like, if this party is going to have both of you here, I just don't want to deal with it. You can make your own feelings known. It's okay. And as much as it can be cruel, some of the best times that I got essentially booted from my first RPG group because of the way that different relationships failed. My relationship with my girlfriend at the time and a relationship of my best friend failed, and then she had felt threatened or something. I'm still don't actually know exactly what happened, but she completely ghosted me. And I think that part of the reason she did was because she assumed that since I had just recently gotten out of a relationship myself, was that I was going to try to engage into a relationship with her. And she didn't want to put up with that. She was just distrustful of men at that point in general. Fine. I get it. It's okay. But in being ousted from this friend group and experiencing that horrific heartbreak is when I realized that I had a friend group that was way better for me in the first place, because they actually gave a shit about me and they weren't constantly, trying to worry about this dodging in a round of relationships and the pseudo-incestuous romantic relationships that involve a friend group like this. And I found my people. I found people who I really would rather be with. And I was only able to finally accept that I needed to shut those other people out of my life when they shut me out first. And that's kind of what you have to put up with, especially in the geek sphere, where there is this overwhelming feeling like you have to include everybody in the group if they wish. Let's go to the chat, because I just went on another rant. Angelwick says, "This is the dream I have. My new partner has never played RPGs before and is willing to give it a try because it's something that I like." Great, Angelwick, but treat this like a strange dog. Let your partner come to the game themselves. Let them discover it themselves. Consider having somebody else coach them instead of you if they're comfortable with that, and let them be the one to do things like ask questions and become more involved. Don't force. Forcing is a great way to make somebody hate a hobby. Let me see here. Where else am I? Erwin, this is far further up. I think one of my favorite RPing of relationships has been RPing as a player NPC who is in a relationship with another NPC or a PC for my games. Because of the behind-the-scenes plot, I plan to utilize relationships as a story-setting element. Yeah, I completely agree, Erwin. It's a lot of fun. Let's see here. I think the additional part of this particular scenario is that it's super okay to make a decision based on the hierarchy of relationships involved. One isn't a bad person to base a decision on. This relationship is more important to me, and therefore this person is more important to me. Therefore their happiness is the most important. So that's absolutely correct. The saying "bros before hoes" is, like, first of all, horrific and misogynist, but it's something that a lot of people kind of come to accept. Like, I know that I'm in a relationship with this person, but this person's my friend and has been my friend for a long time, and therefore, like, I have this misplaced concept that loyalty should be to my friends first and to my partner second, and that's not necessarily true. It can be, but it's not necessarily true. You can say, I've been role-playing with this person for 20 years. We've only been in a relationship for 1. I'd really prefer to keep role-playing with this person who you can't get along with, and that would be okay. It's completely okay to say, this person is my wife. I spend a lot of my time with her. I want to play with her more than I want to threaten my relationship with her because of you. That is legit. And it's okay to be disappointed about that, but I would also point out that it's not okay to resent somebody for being like, I am going to side with my family on this one. Pukajutsu says, I was removed from a game because my roommate was one of the storytellers for it, and she was removed. They told me they were sure I'd become a problem because of their decision about her, and that's when I realized I didn't want to be there anyway. So, Pukajutsu, completely, right? If somebody kicks you out of a game, it's probably a game that you don't want to be a part of. Pure and simple. Because the other thing is, even if you did want to be a part of it, and if everybody resented your presence at the table, it's not going to end up being fun for you in the very near future. There's secret handshakes going on. Maddie says, I have a question. How do you make sure that in-character hostilities don't bleed out into out-of-character hostilities? Apologies if this was not asked already. So, Maddie, in RPG Clinic, look, you can ask any question. A lot of these questions are going to be repeated. It's totally okay, because my understanding of role-playing is going to evolve over time, and it's not just about a web series that I wrote 7 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever the hell it was. I thought that saying was about farming. Totally true. How do you make sure that in-character hostilities don't bleed over? Communication, first and foremost. Talk with the other player. Sometimes it's enough to sort of be like, oh wow, that game was intense. No hard feelings. Like I'm excited by how our characters are not getting along, but like, isn't that neat that we can do that and we can still be friends? Like, if you pull direct attention to it, and you just point it out and you don't sort of cover it up and you don't sort of awkwardly ignore it, then it becomes something that you can talk about. And then the other player can sort of acknowledge, like, yeah, that is weird, instead of feeling hostile. The other thing is, if you do start feeling poorly about another player at the table, that can't be fixed unless the other player is aware. And the easiest way to make another player aware is, again, to use your word hole and to tell them. Saying things like, hey, so I get that our characters are kind of like at loggerheads at the moment, but honestly, I kind of feel like this is dragging my enjoyment of the game down, can open up a dialogue. Sometimes it's enough to hear the other player saying like, oh man, it's nothing personal, it's just that's the way my character is. Sometimes you might need an arbitrator, like the GM, to come in, because it's possible that somebody is doing something that it isn't just about characters having hostilities, but also creating one of those negative play experiences that I was talking about earlier. If you are actively making it so that somebody else isn't having fun, you are bad at this role-playing game, in my opinion. Anyway, Zenrobo says, check in with your friend after game, make sure you're both okay with it. See, Zenrobo has wisdom to impart. She knows where you sleep. It's here. Shit, I ditched a whole horde of folks when I decided to go forward with my current relationship. It was worth it then, it's worth it now. I thank the universe for having known. So yeah, wife before them folks, I guess. Thankfully, I didn't have to ditch anybody to be with my current partner. At least I don't think I did. But I can tell you now, I would have ditched those previous friends for her before any kind of heartbeat could even think of happening. So Maddie, the other thing that I'd say is that if not just communication, the idea of bleed is a thing that we have to do, is to acknowledge that part of the reason why we roleplay is to feel things that we don't normally feel, but to also understand that those feelings are in the context of a story. In much the same way that if you watch a scary movie, the point of a scary movie is not so that you then become paranoid and scared at all other times of your life. The point is to feel scared in a controlled environment for a bit, and then afterwards be okay with that. If you're watching a romantic comedy, the point is not to pick up tips on how to actually act in real relationships. The point is to kind of laugh and point and say like, yep, that is a weird situation. Ain't love strange? But then not to think like the best way to win somebody over is to stand underneath their bedroom window holding a boombox over your head. Role-playing is about feeling, and feeling is fantastic. I have laughed, cried, loved, hated, all of those things in terms of role-playing. It's even fun for me to think like I've engaged in deadly situations with friends of mine where I was actively trying to kill them. And I've also participated in situations where I have had relations with one of the players at my game while that player's partner witnessed the tryst occurring, stepped into blue paint, and then ran down a hallway, leaving a trail of shame behind him. And we all laughed about it at the end. All of these things are amazing. I am an actor. I haven't done a ton of acting quite recently because my career's been doing other things, but who knows, if this LARP's Kickstarter ends up going well, then of course I will have to return to acting. But acting is great because you get to play pretend, because playing pretend is fun. And then when the camera's not rolling or when the curtains are closed, you can put it away. It's the sort of thing that people ask me, like, is it fun to like kiss somebody else on stage or on screen? And the answer is like, not really, because it can be nerve-wracking, but like in the moment you get to experience being in a relationship that you're not, and then immediately put that away because you realize that you're doing it in the service of art or entertainment. You don't need to carry that with you, but if you do, to me that's a sign that it's either you're not compartmentalizing well enough, you aren't a good enough actor, or in this case role player, and that you can get better with time and experience. Right? Like, bleed isn't something you should necessarily be embarrassed about or think like, well, this makes me a bad role player. It's just something for you to improve upon. But reflecting on how it is cool, but it is in a contained environment, is, I think, one of the keys that I would bring forward. And you can even talk about it afterwards to somebody and be like, yeah, it was cool that the two of us totally hooked up in game, right? Right? Like, as long as you try to not make it creepy like I just did, talk about it. You know, like, mention like, wow, I totally didn't expect that to happen. Like, are you okay? Sometimes just asking, are you okay, is enough. And you can also ask, are you okay, to somebody else who might be affected by it. If you bed a character and that player's partner is at the table, sometimes you can just kind of turn around and be like, hey, you okay with what just happened? And like, that's cool too. Good. Thanks. So let's have a look. Here we go. Okay, Zenrobo says, also we have safety cards. Even if I seem upset, it's just role-playing. A yellow card, this is close to crossing a line, and then a red card, stop, pause, let's check in and out of character and make this right. Totally. Crosshair says, I find it easiest to avoid bleed by treating other player characters like GM NPCs. You usually don't get angry at the GM because a dragon ate your gold plopping horse. True. Everyone says, in the before times when I played tabletop in a touchable space, we had two characters who were, by the setting, naturally enemies, who were teamed up to fight a bigger evil with the goal of eventually being friends. And in moments of huge inter-party conflict, they would trade ninja notes with smiley faces or hearts, or somebody to confirm that it's still for fun. The red, yellow, green cards that RPGClinic uses is good for this too. Totally. Zenrobo says, but it's tough. Liz and I were butting heads a lot at the end of Exaltwitch. There's also some bleed where the emotional level stays heightened even after the session is over. That's okay. Just be aware and practice self-care. So, I'll point out practicing self-care and stuff like that. Whoa, Pukajutsu, thanks so much. That's awesome. Bunch of people getting subs there. That's great. Irvana, Osab, Drekmaster, Zenrobo, and Your Boy Blue 49. Saw a few mistakes needing fixed. True. We're gonna try to make sure that we have people sub on their own as well. Like, I hope that people will maintain those subs, but the more sub points we get, we're now 4 sub points away from unlocking another emote slot, for instance. So Pukajutsu, that's very appreciated. It's very helpful. Anyway, so I don't consider myself a member of the BDSM community. However, they do have some awfully good ideas, and one of those things is aftercare. Aftercare isn't exclusive to BDSM play. It should basically be included in a lot of things. Thank you, Dio. Woo affiliate, baby. But aftercare is important whenever you're in a heightened emotional state. The idea that, yes, you have to cool down. If you exercise and you don't take the time to cool down afterwards, you just immediately flop over onto the ground and just stay motionless without stretching, walking, cooling down, drinking water, maybe replenishing some electrolytes, you're going to have a bad time. When you're role-playing, if you don't practice aftercare, you're going to have a bad time too. We already experience aftercare through RPGClinic sessions because we have our discussion afterwards, what we have called the fancy corner at certain times, where we discuss, like, what were the cool things that happened in that session? What do you have any questions? What did you learn in that session? And it's sort of a way for us to ease out of that emotional state. But what you don't see, when the cameras are off, we do check in with each other. We will message and be like, hey, you okay with what just happened? Hey, like, that was rough. Oh, you're crying. Are you all right? And sometimes, like, look, I have cried in a session and it feels amazing. And like, it's very, very rare that I cry and then be like, I'm not okay. But it feels a lot better when somebody just checks in and is like, yeah, man, I felt it too. And then it feels like it's a communal experience. Something as simple as gentle words or acknowledgement can go a long way into getting you used to being in a situation where you can be emotionally vulnerable and trust that people aren't going to bleed all over the rest of their lives. So there's that. Kung Fu Fenris asks, was the bleed hard to deal with after Exaltwitch to Zen Robo, but she's not here at the moment. Oh, no, she did. We so often turned to each other and high-fived over how mad our characters were. It wasn't too bad, but that moment was needed. If we just said bye afterwards, it would likely have been bad. So that's true. Because also, remember, just because somebody has training in dealing with bleed, like actors, doesn't mean that everybody has that. Thank you so much, Walter Odd, for subscribing. That's fantastic. And now there's a hype train, so that's cool too. You'll have a limited time to earn exclusive emotes. This RPG Clinic has no hype train emotes yet, so that's good too. You're an actor too, which is how you got into the hobby. Fantastic, Maddie. So RPG Clinic is made up of me, Kate, Liz, and Scott. Me, Liz, and Scott all were studying performance in university, and Kate was studying stage management. So we're all kind of involved in that. But yeah, like unions and stuff. Oof. But yeah, acting is one of the great parts about it. But to be honest, actors have to learn to control bleed to a certain extent, because otherwise they'd be impossible to work with. So it's the same for role playing. Let's see. Lowe's gifting. Thanks again for that. That's appreciated. We're filling up. That's very kind. It's very appreciated. I've got the shakes withholding from sub bombing for another week or two. Yeah. Waiting on sub bombing means that the people who are going to subscribe naturally on their own get the chance to do so before the bombs happen. In fact, funnily enough, Twitch changed the founder policies yesterday, literally. But our founders have found their way to the chat already. Robert Qual, how many subs did you say you needed for the next emote? We are now at 27 sub points. So we've beaten the 25. The next tier is at 35 sub points. Or if you plot the demise of a beloved NPC beginning post game with "Hey, sorry" can help. Yeah, that's true. It can be kind to be kind like that. Thanks so much for the bits and all that. And there's gift subs going to people. Fantastic. So happy to see that. I just went in there like Eastwood. Take this. It's bleed is an incredibly important aspect that we have to maintain and be aware of. And bleed is not something that people are immune to, even if they've been role-playing forever. And bleed is not something that you should necessarily be ashamed of, in much the same way that you shouldn't be ashamed if a game made you cry or laugh or rage. What matters is what you do with it. And what matters is how you handle it. In much the same way that, like, if you come over to my house and you get rip-roaring drunk and you start smashing up the place, I'm not going to be happy. But if you come over and drink the same amount and are perfectly congenial and friendly and chill and mellow, then that's fine, and I'm not going to mind. What matters is whether you can handle your high. Can you handle your high in terms of drugs and alcohol? That's one thing. But can you handle your emotional high or your emotional low is another. And it's okay to ask for help with that too. It's okay to ask for a hug if you're upset. It's okay to ask to take a break if you're feeling agitated. It is completely okay to flash either a yellow or a red card while you're playing if you're not okay. These cards are not something that you should be ashamed of using, and they're definitely, if you have safety tools in your game, you should not feel ashamed or hesitant to use them. If a player flashes a yellow or a red card in my game, I am thankful, because they are telling me, they're giving me feedback, and they're saying, this is something that I am having some difficulty with, and therefore I can adjust. It isn't a judgment of my play. It isn't even a judgment if somebody flashes a yellow card first, and then later on decides to flash a red card later. That's not necessarily an indictment of my GM skills. It would be if I ignored those cards. But getting the opportunity to make somebody feel better is an opportunity that I will take all the time. And I would hope that most players at the table would do as well. Saying you're ruining the mood or you're wrecking what's going on here because somebody is upset means that that player is being selfish. I totally get that maybe in the middle of your like big dramatic speech, you don't want somebody making out of character comments. I totally understand. But if somebody needs help, be there for that person. Be the help that you want to see. Just never feed me gin and we're fine. I hear you. And even if you pass out in my living room after peeing in my ice maker, it's fine if you deal with it the next day. Sometimes bleed happens no matter what, and as long as things are talked about and change, 5 by 5. That was one time 20 years ago. Completely and utterly, right? That is such an important aspect of any kind of situation is what do you do with the situation that you're presented? I am far less likely to be annoyed with you based on your initial reaction as I am to be annoyed with you based on your continued actions afterwards. So there's that. Still have salty cubes. As long as it's on video, it's always yesterday. Hey, Cheeky C, welcome back. It's like it's so. Maddie, or for anyone else out there who have this question, you can ask at any time, and I'll always be happy to help because of how important it is. Hype yikes. Yikes. How you all deal with bleed, like drawing pictures or writing about your character. So those are absolutely ways that you can deal with bleed as well, right? The reflection can take place in terms of journaling, in terms of art, in terms of expression like that. The way that I deal with bleed is I talk about it with my fellow players, but I generally shake bleed pretty quickly at this point. It's been a part of my career now for a long time, and in terms of role-playing, I've also been role-playing for a long time. That doesn't mean that it won't happen again in the future, but like these days, generally all I need is to just check in with somebody and be okay. Although I would ask for you, I may bring some of this up at the Froyo session, but next RPG Clinic, I will bring up a specific instance in which my emotional state had to be handled specifically without other people being involved. But I don't want to ruin the Froyo, so we'll talk about that at another time. But yeah, like also key point, just don't be embarrassed. You don't need to be. I can't tell you not to be embarrassed. Embarrassment isn't something that you can kind of choose, but just understand that it's okay and own it. You know, you can totally say like, whoa, after that game, like I'm a little hyped, or after that game, I'm kind of wrecked. Own it. Sometimes speaking it aloud makes it real for everybody else, and therefore it's a shared experience and it's easier to handle. Hiding it, going to the effort of making sure that nobody else at the table knows that you're feeling in a certain way, reinforces that feeling, and it can often make it difficult to shed. So that's another thing to keep in mind going forward. Silver Walker and Wild, if someone else is bleeding by writing unwanted stories of your character or creating unwanted art of your character, then you definitely want to say something if that's what you meant to. It's a perfect reason for the green card existing. Like, yeah, I kind of wish when in Exaltwitch, when I killed an NPC that was a beloved NPC, I wish we were using these. I realize I'm pulling up the green card and I have a green screen, so you can't see it. So I have to pull up the other one, which is this one, which I use as the green card when I am in front of a green screen. I wish that was available because I would have wanted to see just that sort of like, because you can even kind of, you can also, I would only do this with a green card, by the way, in terms of safety. You can also show a green card and be like, okay. And then they may choose to show the green card or not, or maybe then they'll be encouraged to show a yellow or a red. I would never be like, are you feeling a red card right now? Because these cards have to be treated kind of like fire alarms or whatever. If somebody is showing a card, or if somebody even mentions like yellow card, you need to immediately take it seriously. Because if you're just like, are you asking me if you're okay, or are you yourself not okay? Like, it needs to be handled immediately when this card is pulled up, which is why also we will never have yellow or red card emotes, because I don't want people to be encouraged to use them as a joke, because they should never be used as a joke. The green card, whether it's invisible or not, the green card is something that you can ask somebody like, hey, you good? And then hopefully they'll flash one, or they'll give you a thumbs up or whatever, so that you know better. The blue card, when you have a blue shirt and a blue background, is basically the same as the green card visually. Fair. Lo says, well, I'm not ashamed to say sometimes my mind gets in a spin if I'm excited and scared at the same time. I'm also not ashamed to say that I'll ask my wife or trusted friend, if wife is not present, to slap me behind the head to shape me back into play. Totally. Sometimes that's what you need. You just need somebody else to be like, yep, I acknowledge that you're in this situation, and you know that you're in this situation, so snap out of it, and that can help. It's one of the things that happens with anxiety attacks. Telling somebody I'm having an anxiety attack is oftentimes the first step to having somebody help you through it. Angelwick says, I'd be interested in knowing what card, if any, of the players would have pulled for that Exalt Witch NPC death. I'm almost certain that they would pull the green card at this point. None of them after the game were like, that was bullshit, or now I don't want to play anymore, or I feel awful about it. You'd have to ask them specifically, Angelwick, but my guess would be that if I asked what card they'd flash at that moment, they'd still all be green, because that wasn't a moment that was a moment that might have made them sad, but that was a moment that made them sad in the context of a story, and not necessarily me ruining their time. I did have a red card moment during Changeling and contacted Jon about it. Luckily, I was watching it on YouTube at the time, so I could just easily nope. Totally. Yep, and that's completely fine, right? And I do want to know, audience members have the ability to tell me that they are not comfortable with something. The advantage to my knowing is that, first of all, I can check in with you because I care about you and I care about how you feel. But the other thing is I can't necessarily change all elements of a game based on an audience member's red card, because if I had to accommodate the game for all audience members as well as the players, then it would start becoming very difficult to please everybody all the time. But I do assure people that if you need to check out, if you need to note because there's something that's happening that you're just like, ugh, I don't want to deal with this, completely fine. Completely fine. That FC was my absolute favorite, and I would have flashed the green card while crying my ass off. Fair. So yeah, just know that is still completely fine, completely okay for you to engage in the safety mechanisms that we have in the game. And for anybody who's new to us, who don't know about our safety mechanisms, I'll give the spiel, because we've done this spiel before, but it is an important spiel to have. All the players, including the GM, have access to 3 cards while we're playing. Showing the green card means that even if I don't look like I'm enjoying myself, I am enjoying myself. I want you to know that I am okay and that I enthusiastically consent to what's happening, or even wish to continue pushing it further. A yellow card indicates I'm starting to approach my limit. We need to start being careful. Maybe you might want to check in with me, but this isn't as serious as a red card. This is where I am approaching where I'm comfortable. So if we continue with this for a long period of time, or if the intensity is ratcheted up, then I may no longer be okay. And then a red card indicates I'm not okay. We need to stop immediately. We either have to retcon what just happened, or we need to change the subject entirely, but no matter what, it's time for me to check in. It is also important and essential to know that no one ever at any time has to justify their use of a safety card. You never have to be like, come on, it's like, so what is the problem? They don't want to say, doesn't matter. If you're like, it's not that big a deal, doesn't matter. If it's, you were fine with this 3 sessions ago, why are you not fine with it now? Doesn't matter. Justification is not important. What is important is making sure that everybody is okay. And yes, Aragorn and Crosshair are also tools for safety. It's stated at the beginning of every session, if you have a concern about a story in the game and just want to give feedback anonymously or just via proxy, pass it on to them. Sometimes it's also, although I'm trying to fix this, I may not catch a whisper while I'm streaming because I'm paying attention to three other players, the music player, the actual stream itself, and I may not be looking at chat constantly, so I may miss a whisper as it goes up. If that happens, if you feel like I haven't acknowledged, talk to a mod. They're there for you as well. Robot Paul says, it's only 15 minutes to the end of the stream, but John, how about talking a bit more about an artist's obligation to an audience vis-a-vis content, especially in regards to an emotive experience like an RPG that's being broadcast? So Robot Paul, that's a really interesting question, and I will totally do some of that, but it might also have to, roll over into another RPG clinic. So, I mean, they like to call themselves tools, so there's that. Responsibility. There are a couple of things that I would point out in terms of responsibility when it comes to an artist and their audience. The first is that nobody owes anybody anything. I know I've been saying this a lot recently, but in much the same way that I don't owe you the perfect stream, you don't owe me your support, either through viewing or bits or subscriptions or participating on the Discord or anything. None of you owe me anything. You can be the biggest fan of this channel and never come back, and that would be okay. I'm not going to resent it. We have had members of our community leave for one reason or another, and that is completely within their rights. It's totally okay for them to do it. And while I might be disappointed or sad to see somebody go, or I may disagree with them on a fundamental reason as to why they're leaving, although that hasn't really happened. But anyway, that's okay. So that's first. The second is that part of the reason why we do our safety spiel now every time we play is not just to remind ourselves, as Kate is fond of saying, a fire extinguisher is no good if you don't know exactly where it is and how to use it. But it's also to remind the audience that we are playing in a vulnerable arena, the arena of emotions. And that's something that we want other people to understand, accept, and not just accept in terms of like, that's cool, but accept the risk. Being interacting with art is a risk. And that's true whether the art is of the Lady Madonna, or whether the art is Sesame Street, or whether the art is Natural Born Killers. I thoroughly believe that you are also allowed to say that something is not art, or that something is bad art in your opinion. You're just not allowed to make that decision for anybody else. So in much the same way that if I'm running, like I have found reviews for the games that I've run online. I found those reviews occasionally. Like people sometimes send them to me, or if I'm doing a Google search and they'll crop up. And I have disagreed sometimes with the criticisms that I've received, but I'm okay with them being voiced. It's fine. You don't have to like the game that I run. You don't have to like everything about the game that I run. I encourage you to not watch if you're not enjoying this. But my responsibility to please an audience is a responsibility that I choose to shoulder as opposed to one that is placed upon me. I'm not required Sesame Born Killers, right? Yeah, exactly. I'm not required to run a game that is pleasant for an audience, because I also don't run the game for my life, right? My income is not based on my Twitch stream. I am not a partnered streamer. And even if I was a partnered streamer, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's your full-time job. I am not a streamer as a career. I'm a streamer as a hobby. And while we take pride in being able to put forward streams that we're proud of, And while we are constantly trying to improve the streams, and we take all the income that we get from subscriptions and bits and stuff like that and turn them back into the stream, that's because we're interested in putting out a product that we're proud of, and not because we have any obligation to please shareholders or to engage with an audience for whom we will now rely on to feed us and clothe us and shelter us. So that's an advantage of my art, is that I don't have a master. I mean, technically, I guess we have a master in that, like, I can't violate Twitch's terms of service. So it's not like I can live action role play sexual situations online, right? Like, I guess, but like that was never going to be my intention anyway. We selected Twitch as a platform because we can work within its rules and guidelines. In my career, I am a writer for a video game company, and that means that I don't always get to write the things that I want to write. I don't necessarily get to choose the projects I work on. I don't necessarily get to have all the story points that I like, because there are people above me, like creative directors, producers, CEOs, who may say, I would rather have this. And then that's the way it is. I can either say, yes, I can try to fight my case, or I can accept that there are things that I'm going to have to put up with as part of the privilege of being able to have a career where I get to be paid a salary to do this, to do what I do, which is narrative design and writing, and game design to a certain extent. And it's not always roses, right? Like, it happens. And that's my responsibility, because they are in a position to end my relationship with them. They can say, you're fired because you weren't listening to us. I don't have to put up with that in terms of streaming. So I do not have a responsibility to the audience other than the one that I place upon myself, which is that I want to put forward good content. I want audience to feel entertained and satisfied and happy, but not to the point where it starts degrading from my own happiness of what's going on in the channel. As an example, if everybody in the audience was saying the next game that you should run should be Pathfinder, I don't think I would have fun running Pathfinder online. So I wouldn't do it. Even if everybody in the audience was like, run Pathfinder, I don't have to do what you ask. But also, if I start running a game and then I find out that I have no audience because everybody's left because they just don't find it interesting or fun, then I get to make the choice as to whether I want to change the game in order to please an audience, or whether I want to just be like, well, I'm fine with this and I have no audience at this point. So what I'm trying to say in the end is not that I don't think that my relationship with my audience is not important. It entirely is. Nor am I saying that I don't actually want to listen to my audience's likes and dislikes and feedback. I completely do, and I encourage everybody to do so. But it is more along the lines of that when we talk about responsibility, I feel the responsibility of being a moral person. I don't want to hurt anybody in chat and would not deliberately try to do so. And I feel the responsibility of an entertainer, that I wish for others to be entertained. But I don't feel a responsibility to coddle or accommodate everyone or the majority of people in such a way that then I would no longer have fun. Were there any ideas you migrated from your commercial work to RPGs because you couldn't get them through the filter of work? No. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for somebody else to do it, but no. First of all, the work that I do for other companies is often owned by them as part of the conditions of my employment. And I wouldn't want to start taking things from my work, even though it didn't make it through, and put it in something else unless I was sure that I owned the rights to that idea. So that's one. But two, I have a lot of ideas, so I don't need to borrow from other places unless I'm pressed for time. Actually, when I am most likely to copy something that I've done before is when I'm grasping at something and I need a name, or I need a character archetype, or I need a location, or I need a personality, and I can be like, okay, I have done this before. I will go here and do that, and hopefully that will be something that I can spooge into the game that I'm playing now. But I don't typically try to do these things because I'd rather come up with new ideas and new things and new experiences. That is a better way for me to move forward. And then finally, I don't migrate ideas from my commercial work because they often wouldn't apply. The games that I've worked on aren't necessarily similar to the games that I run online. So that's about as specific as I can be based on the work that I've done so far. And the corner he will be sent to when he says something super Chevy. I mean, yeah, sure, that's fair. The best part about this community, etc., is that I can fuck off whenever I want to if I choose to. So yes, absolutely. We miss people when they're not here, but we do not oblige them to be here, because in that way lies madness. And I don't want anybody to feel like they are required to be around for us to consider them good people. I mean, look, I was actually looking through the old subscriber lists for my channel a little while ago, and I saw a lot of names there that I'm like, I miss these people, and they don't show up either nearly as often or at all any longer. And there are moments of like disappointment and regret that I either perhaps they got too busy to come into my channel, or perhaps they disagreed with me. But it's something that I have to accept. And sometimes they do come back, and that's a moment of joy. But I also cannot blame them, and I cannot resent them for it. The difference between community and cult. I mean, yeah, for sure. Wrapping up about the same time I have to skedaddle to a meeting. Thanks for the stream. Yep, thank you, Erwin. And that is, I guess, a lead into the fact that that's why the Twirkle has no barriers to membership. Yeah, absolutely, right? Like, the other thing is, you don't have to subscribe to be considered a part of this. You don't have to even follow the channel if you don't want to. It's not necessary. That being said, there is a place where the community manages to get together and continue when we aren't actively streaming, and that's on our Discord. I believe that there is a Discord link below, hopefully. The bot is not active here, the crosshair. So I'm just going to pull a Discord link for you now, just in case. Create invite. So we're going to... So this is only a temporary invite. This will only last for the day, but it is a way for you to join our community. RPGClinic now is made up of 4 people, me, Kate, Liz, and Scott. We have our own individual streams that also have channels in there in this one Discord server. But this is a place where you can discuss anything from your regular role-playing to random stuff. There's an AI dungeon, which seems to be popular with a bunch of people. It's a great place to be, so go ahead and join, especially if you're new here. We'd love to see you. I have to remember to open Moobot for tomorrow. I can use Punchy links. That's fair. So tomorrow normally it would be Punchy on Elizabeth A. Neal's channel. However, unable to. So I am actually stealing it, and it will not be RPGClinic. It's going to be on my channel. I'm going to try as best I can. We're still figuring out exactly what belongs in RPGClinic and what doesn't. But if I'm going to be randomly playing a video game, for now it's going to be on my channel. I will most likely be playing, at least for a period of time, the demo for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake, which is coming out tomorrow. I am an unabashed fan of that series, but only the first few games. I kind of fell out after 4. But yeah, so we're gonna give it a shot. We're gonna tool around on that, and then maybe later we'll slay some Spire, or we'll monster some Train, or we'll Mario some Brothers. There's gonna be a bunch of things happening there. But you did not know that was a thing? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, but this is instead of like the Tony Hawk HD that was released a few years ago, this is a rebuilt remake of these games, which with some added benefits to them, but they are straight up like, this is not just sort of like an HD upgrade. This is a remake, which I'm really excited for. And they've added a whole bunch of things to the game that I'm really pleased with. Like, they're taking into account the fact that they didn't have a whole lot of diverse skaters, so they're adding a whole bunch of diverse skaters. They changed the name of one of the moves because it turned out that it wasn't appropriate based on the person who invented it, and so they changed the name. Like, they're doing a really good job. Unfortunately, of course, tomorrow there's only one level. You can only play for 2 minutes at a shot, and it's only one skater available. But we'll do what we can. So. Fantasy Some Finals. I mean, hope the music is still the same. They have most of the tracks back. There were a couple that they couldn't relicense, and they've added some tracks. But yes, they got most of the tracks back, which is cool. Tony Hawk games were legit. So yeah, come on and tune in because that'll be cool. Saturday, I believe I am also covering. That might be it's either me or possibly Kate who's covering, but there will be something on Saturday. And then on Sunday is the Froyo session. So come on in and ask whatever questions you want.